This is a wild story about parents who abandon their child. Well, this child was not just going to lay down and take this. This child becomes very successful, and you will not believe what the parents do when they find out. I hope you guys are having a great day. Here's story number 1. My story starts a few years after my birth. When I was 5 years old, my parents suddenly gave me up for adoption. I guess you can imagine how traumatic this situation was for me. To give you some more context, I'm a mixed race. My biological mother, Mariella, was born and grew up in Mexico. When she moved to America, she married my father, an African-American man called Frank. And some of the memories I have of them is that they fought constantly. But before the end of the day, they would be happy and would always come to me to tell me they were my parents and loved me so much that they would not fight again. Of course, it did not end there. They fought again and again, and it never turned physical, but the screams and bad-mouthing between them were enough to make me feel scared and sad as a child. Yet, I remember they kept me clothed, fed, and bought me toys, and even if I asked for ice cream, I would get it. Then, one day, my parents and I met with a few strangers. 2 of them were Vanessa and Rodrigo. They became my adoptive parents. The other strangers were a lawyer and a social worker or something like that. That meeting was the last time I saw my biological parents. Maybe it is something in my brain that does not allow me to remember those last moments with them, but I do remember my bio mother telling me that this is what I needed. I did not understand then, and I still do not understand it now. What child needs to be abandoned? Vanessa and Rodrigo was born in America, but their ancestors were from Latin America. They were married and had another daughter 2 years older than me, but they always dreamed with adopting and thus helping a child. I turned out to be perfect to fulfill that dream, given that my biological mother had Latin American roots too. The first months were indeed rough. I did not understand why my bio parents left me with those 2 strangers and their daughter. I treated them badly. I was enraged. But Vanessa and Rodrigo simply did not give up on me. Since that day, they got me a therapist, and therapy helped me a lot. I eventually began to call them Mom and Dad, because, well, they were. My adoptive parents and my new sister were great with me. One thing I noticed is that the environment was not tense there, as my new family rarely fought or screamed at each other. I did ask questions, and throughout the years of my childhood and teenagerhood, I completed the puzzle of why my biological mother and father were not with me. The mother and daughter relationship between me and my mom, Vane, is really close. We're truthful to each other till this day, and it all started because I asked questions, and she not even once did not answer the best she could. This is how I found out that my bio parents felt distressed around me since I was 4. They were working with an adoption agency to set up a private adoption, and a year later, she and Dad, Rodrigo, came to my rescue. Mariella and Frank did not have any other reason. They just seemed to not want me around them anymore. They didn't even want to see me again. They never talked about a reunion with me. They never tried to reach me or call me so I could listen to their voice or something. Nothing. Life just went on. I got used to my new life as an adopted child. Went to school, made friends, attended to the get-togethers of my new family. Mom Vane got pregnant 2 times more, so we were 4 kids in the house, and me and my siblings had a lot of fun. Later, when I was in my last year of high school, 2 people reappeared in my life. I did not love them or need them anymore, but they came uninvited. At first, my adoptive parents acted in a strange way. I thought one of them was terminally ill or that they were going to divorce and did not know how to break the news to us. Because this strange behavior went on for weeks. Then my other siblings began to act weird around me too. And I realized their weird attitude towards me must be something that directly involves me. One morning, I woke up and decided to talk with my mom about what the heck is going on. And she, with her usual honesty, told me everything. She admitted she was scared to tell me, but to sum it up, my biological mother had been calling my adoptive parents for weeks, demanding for a meeting to be arranged as soon as possible, even though she never said the reason why she wanted to see me. Later, she was not the only one calling. My biological father began to harass with phone calls to both my parents too. I felt disgusted and irritated. After 12 years without a call or a visit, now they were desperate to see me. My first thought was, no way, I don't want to see them. But they kept calling, and by the time Mom Vane told me about it, they were threatening with taking legal action. I did not need to deal with something like this. I was in my last year of high school and thinking about my future, hoping for good things. Therefore, the last thing I wished for was to be involved with my awful bio parents and all the drama, surely. At 14 years of age, I made up my mind about my bio parents, especially regarding my mother. I stopped calling them parents, and from then on, I just used their names, Mariella and Frank. They were not my parents anymore, and I saw them as strangers. I came to the conclusion I did not love them. I was sincere with myself and admitted I felt resentful every time I thought about them and what they did to me. And certainly, I was forever grateful with my adoptive parents that were kind and loving, giving me their attention and taking care of me. I felt, saw, and loved Mom Vanessa and Dad Rodrigo as my true parents. My parents talked about Mariella and Frank. I wondered why they wanted to talk to me now. I've already grown up. I considered how this reunion with them could have an effect on my mental health and all things, mostly excuses. They would tell me excuse after excuse, and I'm not going to lie. My curiosity won. I told my parents I did want to meet with my bio ones, but I stated I would always consider them my real parents no matter what happened, and no matter what Mariella or Frank say. Mom Vane reassured me everything will be okay, and she respected my decision. Mom Vane called my bio mother, and they agreed at a time and a place. And a week later, my parents and I drove to my Mariella and Frank's apartment. My dad told me my face looked pale, and my hands were visibly shaking. I felt as if my heart was about to stop working and I could throw up any time. Anyways, I was really nervous, but I've made my decision and was sure of it. That is what I knew. I never imagined I would meet them again, but if they kept calling saying they wanted to see me, at least I should let them see me, so they would all go on with their life as we were doing before the phone calls. When we arrived, they opened the door for us. Both of them looked older, too old, and it scared me for a second, as if 30 years had passed instead of 12. They hugged me. Frank had a big smile on his face and Mariella was crying, which surprised me a lot. The apartment had a funny smell, and I noticed it immediately when I stepped in. The odor made me feel nervous and uncomfortable, but it was not expected because the whole apartment was a mess. I have to say it. The whole apartment looked as if no one else lived there, and if someone did live there, it would be a person with strong mental issues, seeing that the apartment felt as if it was trapped inside of a dumpster. There were tons of cardboard boxes piled up in a corner, dozens of trash bags full of God knows what scattered all over the apartment. The windows and walls were dirty, with different color stains. It was a disaster. We could barely walk with ease. Simply too much garbage on the floor. The disgusting apartment caught me off guard. I never thought they were living like this. And in those moments, the only thing I could think of was this. Thank goodness I don't live here. But neither Mariella or Frank did not seem to be disgusted or ashamed of their place. The living room had 2 old sofas. That's where we sat and talked. I decided to take control of the situation and quickly asked why they want to see me now. They did not respond as I would have liked. My bio mother and father dodged the question and, in its place, told me how much I've grown up, how beautiful I was, and how much they would like to hear me tell them all about what I've been up to all these years. So I asked my first question again. They repeated their lines as if they were learnt from them by a script, as I did not get a real answer this second try either. I got irritated, so I told them the truth, that my parents, Vanessa and Rodrigo, were my best, and my life was great. They did not react, but looked like they just did not listen to me because their face was unsurprised. When I finished my sentence, they changed right away the topic of the conversation to more trivial stuff, asking what was my favorite color, or if I was lactose intolerant. It did not make any sense. For a second, I made eye contact with Mom Vane, and she seemed to be just as confused as me. Well, I tried again, but this time I made a new question. Why did you abandon me? Frank and Mariella are the champions in dodging incriminatory answers. I left the meeting confused and angry. None of them had the courage to answer my questions, and I could sense Mariella and Frank were displeased with the presence of my parents. I did not know why. Perhaps they wanted me to visit by myself, and for what? Well, a few days later, nothing. Nothing happened. I was thinking, and my parents, siblings, and I talked about the meeting tons of times per day. Eventually, they called again. Frank and Mariella were more direct. My bio mother told Mom Vane that they wanted to see me again, but without distractions. So, a new meeting was arranged out of curiosity, this time in a mall, and Mom would be looking from a distance. The day arrived, and me and Mom went to the mall and waited in the previously agreed place. And we waited, and waited, and waited. We called them, no answer. Then, 2 hours later, here they are. Instead of feeling anxious, I felt annoyed, but I was hoping this was the last meeting with these people. We sat at a table in one of the mall restaurants. We did not eat, but Frank began to ask. I did not have anything to hide. I said the truth in every one of their questions. I told them I was graduating from high school and was planning to continue my education, and that my parents support me. Then I guess they felt comfortable enough to request and demand for the most awful thing I could ever imagine. They asked me to go and clean their apartment. Not only that, they wanted me to literally forget about my future and move out with them again so I could become their maid. My bio parents came back to my life after abandoning me, harassing my family with phone calls and begging for useless meetings so they could ask me to sweep the floor of their dirty apartment and be their chef? Their female servant. At first, I thought it was a joke. I was looking for the cameras, when I realized they were simply not joking, and I thought they were crazy. To prove their point, these two people told me that I was their daughter no matter how much time we had lost between each other. And now that they needed help, I must help them because this is what a good daughter would do. The excuse for living in such a dirty way was really stupid. They told me they could no longer clean anything since they worked too much and were much too tired after the day. And, well, the trash, it accumulated over the months. Let me tell you, nobody had tried to clean up that apartment in the last 3 years. I told them what I thought. They were crazy and did not want them in my life anymore, and I got up and left. My family and I were simply dumbfounded. Sadly, the crazy Mariella and her husband Frank, well, they did not leave us alone. They kept calling and calling at least 10 times a day. We tried to ignore them the best we could, but then they started to send threatening messages. And as a family, we decided to get a restraining order. After the court hearings and all of that drama we went through regarding my relationship or whatever Mariella and Frank wanted was over. The next thing that happened, my mother Vane went to the mall alone. The same mall I met with Frank and Mariella for the second time, thinking it would be like any other day. But my biological mother was there, hiding and waiting. As my mother told me, someone suddenly grabbed her arm. That someone was my crazy mother, who immediately began to scream in her face, demanding to see me again and complaining for the restraining order against her and my bio father. My mother screamed for help and the security guards came running, but my bio mother did not want to let the arm of Mother Vane go. After that incident, my horrible biological mother was arrested for breaking the restraining order, and then this whole mess turned out darker than I could ever think. Following the arrest, we got to know the real and ugly truth about the horrifying actions of my bio parents. I did not know I had another 2 siblings. For a cruel reason, Frank and Mariella decided to have more children after they got rid of me. My other 2 siblings, a boy and a girl, were physically and mentally abused by them. My siblings were malnourished, barely went to school, and under their dirty clothes they had bruises. Not only this, but both of them would be left unattended for hours and hours almost every day. When my brother was around 5 years old, he was forced to go outside and beg for money in the streets. If he had not come back with enough money, our father would beat him. My 2 siblings' nightmare ended because they were absent from school for a month. And when they returned, a good teacher saw the bruises on my little brother's body and called CPS. Subsequently, both of our parents got arrested and sent to prison. But sadly, they only served a 2-year sentence. My siblings were put in the foster care system, later to be adopted by a relative of my mother whom I don't know. After hearing all this, I confirmed my theory. Mariella and Frank were not only crazy but psychopath. I felt terrified and could not stop thinking about how different my life would have been if they had decided to keep me as their daughter. I got lucky. It's the only thing I kept repeating to myself for days. I had to get back in therapy, it's just too much for me. I was not ready to see Mariella and Frank ever again, and their harassing calls, the strange meetings we had, and then their skeletons in the closet were just too overwhelming. At least, I was sure I had the complete support and love of my parents and siblings. I have to agree with OP's statement at the end. OP's parents, biological ones, were definitely psychopaths. Guys, I want to hear your opinion about what you would have done if you were in that situation that OP had to deal with. I know it's a crazy situation, but try to put yourself in the shoes of OP and see what you would do. We're going to look at the next and final story of the day. And by the way, if you're not subscribed yet, take a second and click that button so you never miss an update. Alright, here's the title of the second story. Am I the a-hole for laughing uncontrollably at my son when he asked me to replace a Christmas gift? He broke out of anger. My son is almost 17. This Christmas, we bought him an expensive computer gaming chair, as he plays a lot of online multiplayer shooters. My son has some anger issues, which he's currently in therapy for, and these shooters tend to bring out his temper more than normal. However, for the past few months, he's been keeping it together well, so I figured the chair might be a good present. Oh boy, I was wrong. The day after Christmas, he was gaming, started to have bad luck, and apparently people in game were ducking with him, because he was losing his patience quickly. This culminated to him screaming insults and then picking up his chair and slamming it against the ground, breaking the back of it. After I had to talk him down, we had a very serious conversation about him no longer being allowed to play multiplayer games while under my roof until his therapist feels comfortable with his progress, talked about coping mechanisms, etc. However, I made it very clear this was unacceptable and he would be grounded. We've had these heart-to-hearts many times, so it's not like every time he has an outburst I make light of it. It's a serious issue and treated like such. However, when he came to me later that day and told me he'd like me to replace the chair because it was a gift, and he really liked it, and it would only be fair. The frustration, disbelief, and disappointment in his behavior boiled over, and I started laughing hysterically. as in full laughing fit, barely able to breathe or talk. The more he'd plead his case, the harder I laughed, repeatedly asking him how it was fair in his mind to replace a gift I paid for that he broke in anger. This obviously made him more mad, which led to him getting emotional, but I just couldn't seem to stop myself. I tried walking out of the room and asking him to drop it, but every time he'd say, "But I need a chair," or "What am I supposed to do now?" And I'd just laugh again. I tried explaining that I'm not laughing at his feelings, I'm laughing at how absurd it is for him as a teenager to expect me to replace stuff that he can't be bothered to treat with respect, and then whine about it when he breaks it. Well, he's still mad about it, and feels slighted. I feel bad for laughing, and honestly wonder if I had some sorts of mini, stress break myself, because it's never happened before, and I could not seem to stop. But at the same time, I stand by the fact that his request was ridiculous. Ridiculous enough to make most people burst into laughter. Guys, how badly did I duck up? So it actually turns out in the comment section for this story, there was like a 50-50 split. Half the people think that the mother laughing hysterically was actually bad for the child's future mental health. The other side thinks that the laughing was just breaking down of the mother who did not know how to handle the situation. I don't really know which one to choose of those two, so I'll leave that to you guys. Drop the comments down below and let's talk about this story because it's a simple one, but it's very unique. So let's talk about it. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and just remember, it's cool to be kind. I'll catch you in the next one.